At first this build started as a joke, and I didn't expect it to be as viable as it turned out to be. Let me introduce to you a build that spawned from complaints that Hector's rats are useless. The first and primary skill you want is 2 rats, so while leveling, ignore rat paragismo as long as possible. This ability's linchpin is the Mad Inventor, which, with proper timing and placement, will be doing 99% of the damage for you. Increasing duration and reducing cooldown are a bonus, but the Healing Nibbler is another node you really want. Rat Paragismo is the second ability in your arsenal. You won't really ever need this if you place your 2 rats right, but it's nice to have the added stun while running away from stuff, and proper placement of a stun in the lightning stream will devastate enemies. The resource generation node is probably the last skill you should get, since Hector's dodge also restores all of his resources anyways, but it can be the make or break energy needed for turret upkeep. So, as you can see here, once placed, the turrets will arc between each other. The distance the arc can go is pretty long, but it seems to not always work at higher distances, so it's best to keep them apart 1 dodge roll cooldown running distance apart. Some issues that might arise are: 1. If you place more than 2 turrets at once, the lightning arc won't calculate for the new ones, and you won't get a lightning arc again until there's no turrets left on the field. I'll discuss this a bit more later. 2. In early access, the turrets had a bad habit of falling through non-flat terrain, and while I understand why this happened from a mechanical standpoint with Unreal Engine, I haven't seen it yet on live. That being said, when it did happen, the lightning still worked, so don't discredit how OP this is if it does happen to you. Now, just for a bit here, I'm going to showcase how this build works. I'm not showing the whole fight, just the first round and the last round, because really, you probably don't want to sit through that. Unlike the challenge video on my Twitch, where I did a master survival mission in a much smaller room even, this time around I'm actually using my gun and my sniper abilities, because this is no longer a pointless challenge, like a lot of my content, but an actual viable build. Now, ostensibly, this build will work much better outside of co-op for a few reasons. First, placement of the turrets is reliant on your spatial awareness, making straight lines and doing your best to keep the enemies inside of those lines. This isn't so easy in co-op unless your partner agrees to the strategy of kiting mobs into the lightning path, and also sees where you place your turrets and is actually paying attention to you and not just the enemies, which probably isn't going to happen. Another small reason being that the node that wasn't taken for Rat Paragismo is a healing direct ability that is primarily useful for co-op, where you can recast Gizmo to target somebody other than yourself. Then again, if you farm up some extra ability points, you could add that on. My advice on that note is to dump extra ability points into upgrading your main gun and making 2 rats stronger. Or, like me, you could be a purist and never farm any additional points. Earlier I said I'd expand on why the 2 rats multicast can be both a good thing and a bad thing. This really depends on the kind of enemies you're facing at any given point. For example, especially outside of survival, enemies like the sandbugs, the burrowing bullet hellworms, or the casters that pop healing auras and drainage beams, or even that one late game mob that has seemingly infinite iframes. You may wish to just surround them with extra turrets, or use your post-arc turrets to hold them down while you tend to other enemies. This is also beneficial for 2 more reasons. Enemies that jump at you or teleport at you will often target a turret instead of you. I'm not really sure why this happens, and it could potentially be a bug, but it's a benefit anyways. Since turrets don't have HP, they can serve as a distraction device for these mobs specifically. Additionally, if you care about leaderboards like me, the attacks from turrets keep your combo meter going, which might prompt you to have a few more out than needed for the lightning arc. But do keep in mind, even with these hidden perks, you will have to let all of the turrets explode before you can place a new set for a lightning arc. Maybe someday the devs will allow the turrets to calculate for more than 2 at any given time, but for now this is your strategic limitation. I'll just let the fight play out from here, but if you'd like to skip to the next bit of commentary, there's a time skip in the description below. So what about leveling? You don't want to have to run a different build and then re-roll to this silly thing at the endgame. Well, let me show you just how stupidly OP this build is in the best mission type for leveling, defense. Here's a 0 effort run on Master, at the highest level I had available at the time that this video was recorded. Note that during this time I barely touched my shotgun except to take out some healing trees and the annoying little casters that put them up. While leveling, you won't necessarily have all of these abilities attached to the turrets, but spamming defense missions is the best way to level in the game because mobs are focused 90% of the time on the shrine, as long as you keep a bit of distance. So even with the very first iteration of the turrets, you can just set them around the shrine and drink tea off in the distance as you watch the bodies drop. Well, that's all for the commentary, and I hope to see you for future odd and unexpected builds in Pagan Online. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you made it this far, and swing by my Twitch, where you can use a special hype command in my chat to unlock on-demand challenge modes.